There was some artists for whom the video was not actually a new concept. David Bowie had been messing around with mime, dance and performance for years. He realised early on how important it was to create an image that could be recognised and imitated by admirers. In the early 70s, he bought primitive video equipment and made his own videos while his stage act became more and more extreme. Bowie created the character of Ziggy Stardust, a war paint and mime rock and roller. Then at the height of his success, he killed him off and moved on to different images and new experiments.
16, school leaving age. I went to an advertising agency and I took night courses at art school. One thing that came out of the advertising thing, I think, was learning about storyboarding and putting your ideas down on paper in chronological order. So I was automatically, when I was designing shows, I was drawing the shows before I was sort of putting the music together for them. And that really came out of advertising, I think, and that stayed with me. So right from the beginning, I was storyboarding videos. The first videos that I started doing, I think, properly, were in collaboration with an English photographer called Mick Rock, who I found I had a lot of empathy with and ideas about what rock could be doing, and what it could be saying. And our first thing that we did together was Gene Genie. Looking back on that one, it looks sort of Beatley now. It felt very new at the time. I think it was new in as much that nothing had been dressed like that, for a few years. It was very Levi's and that kind of look. And we wanted to get a very graphic, white, almost Vogue look. Big faces, big bits of faces, eyes, against stark white backdrops, things like that. And to throw in an environment, so we found a place, I think it was called the Mars Hotel in California somewhere. Has to be in California somewhere. And we stuck the band in there. Really, the 60s, when there was so much of the music was supposed to be sort of pointedly instructive and informative, sort of overwhelmed me. And through my sort of theatricality of wanting to entertain, that sort of came in as well and go, oh, I'd better sort of make this relevant to something. And I think I've kind of been able to strip that off a bit now. So I don't feel so much like some kind of information bureau with red hair. I think, well, at the beginning, I confused a lot of what I deemed art with what in fact was a very strong British vaudeville tradition. There's a lot of theatricality, which I put on probably a higher pillar than it deserved at the time. And it was a lot of sort of musical quality to a lot of the things that I was doing. And now I'm less inclined to call what I do art as sort of populist entertainment.
When you're working with a director, do you find that a useful thing because you can trigger off ideas and you can take something?
Yeah, very much so. With Mallet, who's a great person for me to work with, he's incredibly generous in his allowing me to do whatever I want, especially at the beginning when neither of us really knew if I could make videos or not. But I would come up with...
Ashes, is that?
Yes, that's right. But I brought my drawings to him and I said, look, I'd like to have a crack at this. Can we try it my way? But there are things that I don't understand about video technique. Would you sort of help me out on sort of special effects and things? And do you know how to turn the sky black? And this loud voice said, yes. So we turned the sky black. But David has been excellent in those terms, technically. And he'll always continue an idea. When I might wrap it up too quickly, he'll expand an idea that I might make too brief.
What about wit, which there's a lot of, obviously?
But yes, I think David and I are good for each other that way. We don't get too po-faced about it. Although Ashes looked pretty po-faced. It was a riot making it. Did turn out deadly serious, though. One thing I've been sort of toying around with was the repellent and attractive qualities of the other side of the world, be it the Middle East or the Far East, how we're both drawn and repulsed by what happens and who they are and why we even consider it us and them, but we're all one. That sort of basic idea came through, firstly on Let's Dance with the Aborigines and sort of the colonial English, and then in China Girl, and then finally in Alien. It hadn't really occurred to me until that time that it was a subject that fascinated me a lot.
In Let's Dance, I like that mixture of the sort of mundane, which is that early part of it,
Yes.
and then the red shoes. Where did they couldn't?
Well, I guess that, well, they are two symbols anyway. Red shoes do, for me, anyway. I mean, that's a sort of a found symbol. It's something that somebody else already created as a symbol, and it seemed apropos for this particular video. One, they are the sinfulness of the capitalist society. I mean, they're a pair of luxury goods, red leather shoes. And also, they're a sort of the striving for success out of black music. It was always put on your red shoes, baby. You know, I mean, and those two qualities I thought were sort of right for what I needed as an object in that particular, both the song and the video.
China Girl was banned, of course. Did you think that was just stupid or what?
I understand the concern. I do understand the concern. I feel very awkward about that, about censorship, because I object very strongly to the chicks used in page 3 things. And I think it's because it's what they're surrounded by. To see, I mean, it's easy enough to say, well, somebody else can take their clothes off, and that's called art, but because we appear in that's one situation where to be surrounded by so much death, hostility, violence, to have that as the center pearl for that kind of grotesque situation, I find very scary, especially coming back to this country where it doesn't particularly happen like that on the continent much. Although it is doing more, increasingly so. It's very startling to come back to it and see it, and it's very scary, I think. So I don't know, you know, because we're just sort of pumping it out on the... And I don't need to use sort of naked bodies and in that particular context, because again, they are surrounded by other sort of disorienting symbols which add up to some collective message which is not at all agreeable sometimes.
And not perhaps what you intended anyway. So.
Yeah.
So you have to take
I don't know, I find it an enormous dilemma, and I defy anybody to say that they don't find it a dilemma. I think it is a dilemma. If we knew how to deal with those particular situations, I think we'd know how to deal with a lot more situations.
The video you did with Jagger, were you able, when you were actually doing it, were you able to enjoy the song that much more as well in the actual performance? Was it different from doing it?
Well, the difference, there was absolutely nothing premeditated about it.
Yeah. Lies. You can't get away with saying that kind of thing.
Absolutely nothing premeditated about it. Worked on the rehearsal, John.
And you did it very fast?
Well, what we had intended doing, we were going to do a live satellite thing where Mick would sing in New York and I would sing in England. Then we found out that half-second time delay thing really screwed it up. There's no way that we could technically overcome that so that we could both sing together. There is no way around it. So that we decided to do a video together instead. We decided on the song that afternoon, and we brought the band in. Did it at 7 o'clock. We started at work at 7 o'clock in the evening. We finished the record by 11:30. We rushed down to the docks, and we started work in the docks about 12:15, and we rolled through to 8 o'clock the next morning. So we did the record and the video within those few hours, which is a completely different way of working from the way I'm used to working. It's great. I know a lot of young bands work like that.
Do you think
or
that
say they work like that. I've heard it said so many times, oh, when I hear that tune, I always think of their video. But with me, I'm fortunate enough to be able to completely eradicate the video. If I like a particular piece of music, I can blank out the video that was associated with it quite successfully. But I think a lot of people have a lot of trouble with that, which is a shame, because there was nothing more enjoyable in the 70s or the 60s or whatever, to be able to recreate different scenes in one's imagination for a piece of music.
And keep them to yourself.
And keep them to yourself. They become very private visions. And music was a lot more personal because of that, I think.
What about the fact that these videos go into people's homes and that you're there in people's homes? How much do you think that has either, has that demystified music and actually the kind of characters who make music?
You know, I don't know. I find it very hard to get inside the head of an 18-year-old these days. I mean, I don't know if it carries the same kind of mystic qualities that it used to for me. It does occasionally with me still. I mean, yes, there are various pieces of music that I find quite transcendental. Not quite as raucous as it used to be, probably. I think Philip Glass still has that same effect on me now that, say, Little Richard used to. But I needed that kind of loud, raucous thing when I was younger. Now I'm looking for another kind of sensibility. I'm not quite so stricken with the idea of making a point. I don't think I'm quite as dogmatic anymore. I'm not quite sure that any point that I have to make isn't being made quite as well by other people. And that maybe the point, my most important point, is that I can entertain very well. And I think I'm no longer finding it uncomfortable to have reached that conclusion. That I now find I'm very comfortable being an actor, an entertainer, without too much all-encompassing stuff to say.